we're each playing our own game, right? So we each have the winning hand of our own game. It's when we're trying to play someone else's game for them or the game that we think we're supposed to be playing that we can end up with those losing hands because we're not playing our cards right. We're not tuning in to say, what is it that brings me alive?
Welcome to the Lara Jane Layton Show. This podcast is for you, the person who keeps putting others first. Your self-talk has held you back. You no longer need to take a second seat. Let's explore ways to overcome self-doubt. You can silence that inner bully voice and achieve your full potential. Here's your host, Lara Jane.
Welcome to the show, friend. My new best friend, Carissa, is with us here today, and we are going to talk about limiting beliefs. Now, I know. Oh, I don't. I believe everything's possible, blah, blah. Yes, we all do. But we also have that limit of maybe I don't have enough time, or I'll never get this done today, or you can always come up with something, or I might not make it all the way, but I'll make it 2 blocks. That's still limiting where we're going. And so how do we overcome those beliefs? And, how do we even recognize that we have them? So Chris is going to help us learn that. But before we get started, we're going to get a quick word from our sponsor. When we come back, Carissa, help me overcome my limiting beliefs. So we'll be right back. Hey, since I rarely have openings in my coaching schedule, I have a new resource out there on my website. It is called the BFF Coaching Network. And I have offered a spot there for any coach that has been on the show to list their coaching. You can go out there, you can listen to their episodes, you can feel a little bit about them, and then choose a coach that will work for you. So LaraJaneLayton.com, the BFF Coaching Network. All right, Chris, the information about using the show notes. So help me really seriously. I think we all have limiting beliefs to a point. And so I know I do, still today, and I swear I've overcome so many. But how do I break free from myself caging? I have this thing. I was like, I cannot do this. So I just stay in my cage instead of try.
Oh my gosh, Laura Jane, yes, you are not alone. I still have limiting beliefs, right? I like to think of it as a constant process of becoming, unbecoming, learning, growing, evolving, and I like to use the word expanding. A lot of times we think about growing from one version of ourselves into the next, and I've really started to reframe that image of concentric circles. I'm expanding. I'm still including all of the versions of me that came before. I'm not leaving anything behind, but now it's that and more. And so I think when it comes to overcoming limiting beliefs, for me personally, I think a lot of it has to do with understanding evolutionary biology and neuroscience and how our brains are wired, and then starting to look at our upbringing, the role that our parents or primary caregivers had in our lives, the authority figures in our lives. And one thing that I think is maybe something that we don't think about very often is we sometimes think, gosh, these limiting beliefs are holding me back. I want to break free. But how often do we become grateful for them? So, a lot of overcoming my limiting beliefs has been unlocking gratitude and compassion for the version of me that created that limiting belief in the first place.
So how does a version of me create that? Okay, maybe at 3 years old, I stubbed my toe. Is that all of a sudden all couches jump out and bite your toe?
It really depends. I think it's a great example. I think it really depends. Oftentimes, when we're at that age, exactly, 3, 4 years old, we're taking in a lot of data, a lot of information about who we are, what is our role in the world, and primarily, how do we stay safe? And so that is really our primary function is to stay alive. And then once we do that, we reproduce, right? As a species, that's the goal. And so when we think about we'll use that beautiful example. If I stubbed my toe as a 3-year-old, maybe I don't develop a fear of couches or whatever I stub my toe on. But instead, if my primary caregiver started shaming me or demeaning me, or maybe they yelled at me because I started crying when I stubbed my toe, then that's exactly how we start to develop a belief to say, it's not safe to share my emotions. It's not safe to share my pain because I'm going to be shamed for it or ostracized in some way. And especially as young children, we know our brains are really smart at getting us this far. Our brains know that we depend on our primary caregivers for literally survival. And so at that age, which is also corresponding to the developmental stage when we tend to believe we are the center of the universe, we think everything is our fault or happens because of us. And so if we don't have the ability to see that maybe I'll use parent here in this context, maybe our parent just had a really hard day at work. Maybe they're stressed, right? But we don't have the capacity at that young age to understand adult emotions and the complexities of life. And so, if our parent, especially if it happens repeatedly, they start lashing out at us because they just don't have the ability to hold us in our pain, that's exactly how we develop a limiting belief that says, it's not safe to share this pain. I'm going to be stoic, or I'm going to take out that pain in some other way that helps keep me safe and preserves my survival.
So, staying safe, I definitely want to be safe. And I know I tend to maybe not want to tell the truth when I don't feel safe. I tend because I'm afraid someone's not going to like what I have to say or
Yep.
how I'm going to say it. Or I'm afraid that I can't say, "Oh, I went to the bar last night with friends," and then maybe someone's gonna shame me for as they think bars are bad. But in all of this that I'm saying, I'm shaming myself first, and
Yep.
that's the part that's scary. Because how do I get rid of that?
Mm. It's a beautiful question. And I love the awareness that you're bringing forward. We know the phrase, right? We are our own harshest critic. And so we think about, okay, maybe we have someone in our lives who would shame us for going to the bar. We have someone in our lives who would shame us for not doing enough around the house. We might have someone else entirely, like a parent or a friend or someone that we have in our lives who might shame us for not working hard enough or getting the promotion. And so you think about kind of the cumulative effect of all of that and our ego, which I have a lot of gratitude for ego. A lot of times ego gets a bad rap, but our ego, in trying to keep us safe, is trying to take on the role of the combo criticizer, right? They're trying to anticipate all of the different ways that we might be criticized. However, what we can start to do is, I like to say, activate curiosity. So that's really where it starts. If we can interrupt that, instead of attaching to that shame spiral, we start to see the thing going, around in circles. And if we can stop it and say, wait a second, what makes me believe that that's true? Right. And then we can follow up with these questions depending on how far we want to take it. We can start to follow up with questions like, when did I first learn to believe that? Who made me think that that was true? And as we start to unravel it further, what would happen if that was true? Right? Kind of these questions like, what would that mean about me? And that's where we can start to discover kind of a whole stockpile of beliefs that maybe we've never actually looked at, and all of those beliefs get combined into this one particular narrative or shame story that we might tell ourselves over and over. So it's just like the image that came to mind was like a cassette tape that just like goes on play, it goes on repeat, and we don't stop to ask ourselves, why do I keep playing this tape on repeat? How is that serving me? And what is it costing me? So there are a lot of really beautiful, curious questions that can help counteract the judgment or the shame that we're placing on ourselves.
What could it be costing us? I mean, I think a cost is money, but there's lots of things that could time.
Time, peace, right? Confidence, uh, contentment, and especially time, I think is our most precious resource. And it might be costing us money. I think about myself and my career. There were a lot of ways that I have kept myself small over time, especially as a woman identifying person. I've, in my career, encountered a lot of people giving me negative feedback saying, you're too aggressive, you're too assertive, you're too this, you're too that. And so I really developed a story that I was too much. And I made myself small because, to the point you made earlier, Laura Jane, I didn't want to rub people the wrong way. Or I think what really came up for me was, I don't want to cause friction with the authority, right? My bosses or my boss's bosses, because I really needed that job. and I'll say needed, in quotes here, because yes, I needed a job, right? We live in a capitalistic society where we're required to make and spend money in order to survive. That's the structure we live in. And that was a limiting belief that I thought I had to take however I was treated, however I was spoken to, because I needed that particular job. When in reality, yes, it's not necessarily an easy process, but we can go find other jobs, other means, other ways of making money. We don't need to stay in a situation that is toxic or abusive or simply just completely uncomfortable. But those are the ways that we can really keep ourselves small and say, maybe I can't do any better, or I don't have the time, I don't have the energy to go look for that other opportunity, that new partner, that new job, whatever it is, or even just to do the work to communicate with your kids or your friends in a more conscious and clear way. So there are a lot of ways that our brain is wired to preserve the status quo. And so when we think about, we talk about the comfort zone a lot, and I like to call it the zone of familiarity
Mhm.
because I think the comfort zone is a little bit of a misnomer. Our zone of familiarity can actually be a very uncomfortable place to be if that's representative of the environment that we grew up in. If we think this is what life is, this is how I stay safe, how I stay alive, then we will go out and naturally recreate situations that are equally as uncomfortable, but they're familiar. So we know how to navigate, we know how to handle because we've developed the tools to navigate that type of environment.
Well, so if I grew up in an area that had saber-toothed tigers,
Hmm.
and every time I went outside, I knew to look to the right and that make sure that there was no tiger that was going to get me. So that's a environmental thing that I grew up and I learned how to stay safe from saber-toothed tigers, even though they're deadly, right? But the idea of changing the environment, like I could get away from all the saber-tooth tigers and there'd never be another one ever, but there's cobras there. And I don't know how to stay safe between cobras.
Mm-hmm.
So we say, I know this one. I know how to stay safe. I've survived 30, 40 years with the saber-tooth tiger. Why take the step and go learn how to do cobras? Because I don't know how. Could be easier, could be harder. And so that's that same thought process we have when we're stuck in a situation we don't like, but are afraid of something to be different.
Exactly. You've got it. Absolutely. And I think that's where, because our brains are wired to really seek out those threats, exactly to your point of saber-toothed tigers versus cobras. But what if we could unlock a way of being we're not afraid of saber-toothed tigers or cobras because we know that we've created internal peace, and this might be taking it a little too far, but creating the internal peace to say, I don't need to control everything that happens to me. And kind of this more of a Zen type of philosophy of, whatever happens is meant to happen. I think sometimes when I reflect on my own journey, there were a lot of times where I would get really attached to a particular outcome. I'd set a goal and I'd say, okay, this is what it means to be successful or worthy or whatever it is. And when I didn't get that exact outcome, that felt like a threat to my system because now I'm coming up against one, I'm wrong. I was wrong, which doesn't usually feel good to us in our bodies, but also this idea of we want to be in control of our fate. We want to feel that we are in control of our lives and we are the captain of our own ship, if you will. And that's where it's kind of this insidious thing. We want to feel like that. But how many of us actually feel that way, right? We're constantly thinking about all the things we have to do or all the things that have power over us. And so it can be really, really difficult to your point, to change that environment, to really look in the mirror and take responsibility for how we've contributed to keeping the saber-toothed tigers in our lives.
And you're talking about that navigating, and we are the captains. But you go, oh, but the wind's blowing from the north, and I want to go north. So how do I go against the wind? And so we start doubting our own captain abilities. But there are a way we can point the sails and go north, even with the wind that way. So it's learning who you are, how you navigate, how you function, and expanding your own. They're less limiting beliefs.
Mhm.
We so far I haven't gotten rid of all of them. They're still there, but I know I have a lot fewer than I ever had before. I know that one thing that used to hold me back, or that other thing that used to hold me back. Um, the word pretty used to hold me back. Oh, I hated it when someone would say, "Oh, she's pretty." And I'm like, there's so much more to somebody than their looks. And it would just irk me that that's the only thing that was of value. It's like,
Yep.
so what? But that's what we see first. That's what exists before anything else is that first visual. And
Mm,
so, how do I start being okay with that word and not put it in my own belief section? And so, it's one that I've gone, it's that added icing on the cake. And
mhm.
sometimes we see what the cake looks like before we ever taste it. So, it's okay.
Mm. Yeah, that's a beautiful way to highlight the idea of reframing. Oftentimes it's not this idea of, oh, I'm bad, I need to let go of this belief completely. It's how do I shift it and reframe it into a shape that does serve me, right? So rather than getting triggered or frustrated or irritated or angry, whatever it is that we're feeling when we hear particular words or when we're in certain situations, it's instead that's where that curiosity can come in. I like to ask, what is my body trying to tell me about this? Right. And it sounds, not to put words in your mouth, Laura Jane, but it sounds like you were really focused on, I want to focus beyond the surface, right? I want to really see people for the beauty that's more than skin deep. And so that discomfort or that trigger can be the data that we need to say, okay, so you get to look past, right? You get to go to a deeper level. And I think that can be an area that is also really kind of a gold mine of insight is to activate that curiosity rather than judgment and say, what is my body? What are these emotions trying to tell me? Oftentimes in today's society, we want to feel good all the time and we want to feel bad none of the time. And that is unfortunately just not the life that we've chosen to live, the system that we live in. And so I like to say we get to choose our hard. Life is hard, but we get to choose our hard. Are we going to do the hard work of getting curious, looking at those beliefs, or are we going to do the hard life of having these uncomfortable emotions and never getting curious and never looking at them fully? And so, yeah, I think reframing those beliefs and understanding what is my body trying to tell me and how do I shape this in a way that serves me so that maybe this energy that I'm feeling propels me forward rather than keeping me stuck.
And propelling forward, that sounds great. Like, how can I get rid of that anchor that holds me back? And it's my anchor, and I'm the one that threw it into the ocean, right? So, how do I pull it back up and free myself? And we might have a million anchors down there in the water, all with a different length of tether, and you got the one up that's holding you the most back. But you're gonna wander a little bit, you're gonna move a little bit, and you're gonna find the next one and the next one, and like that onion pill thing that we always say, is I don't know what the next one even is until I've cleaned one up. Now, yes, there are people that have this miraculous switch overnight or in a second. That's rare. Most of us have to do it one at a time, and when you do 2, it's almost scary, like, if 2
Mm,
things disappear, like, what do I replace it with? Because I have to do a replacement. If I don't wanna feel empty, so what is it that I'm
mm,
adding back? If I'm saying, "What was the one we just said?" Pretty.
mhm.
What is it? And is capable? What is the thing that I care about? And how do I add that value back on?
Yeah, I love that. I think the idea, and you said it so beautifully too. The fear of emptiness is also can be really scary. I think a lot of times when I think about propelling forward or that feeling of emptiness, I was really caught in this idea of the hustle culture, right? I need to always be moving. I need to be going forward. I can't have any empty space. I'm supposed to be really full, and that has actually been a really counterintuitive approach that I've taken when I used to get really frustrated and self-critical of, I just need to know which direction to go. I need to continue making forward progress and learning to say, you know what? when it's time to move, I will have a clear alignment of which direction to move. If I don't feel clear on which direction to move, it means I'm not supposed to move anywhere. That was really, really hard to learn how to sit with, to say, okay, I'm just going to sit in the discomfort. I'm going to allow the empty space because we must create the space if we want to welcome anything in. I used to a lot of times think, okay, well, I'll make space when I see the next thing that's ready to take this space. Then I'll move it out and move the new one in. Um, thinking about like kitchen appliances. Okay, my fridge is fine and I'll keep using it until I see the next fridge that I want to replace it with. And sometimes that works really beautifully. And sometimes we need to sit there with a vacancy, right? Maybe not the fridge because we need that. It's like critical, but maybe there's another appliance that's less used. We know we want to upgrade it, but maybe we want to test out what it's like to have a counter free of the toaster oven or whatever appliance we're not using as frequently. Um, and so learning to sit with that emptiness can also be in itself, a blessing because what I hear when I think of that, and this is obviously based on my own experience, is that for me, the fear of emptiness really came from if I allow myself to sit in the emptiness, then the saber-toothed tiger is gonna come get me or my limiting beliefs are gonna pounce on me, and I'm not ready for that to happen because I don't believe that I'm capable or powerful enough to confront those limiting beliefs. I thought they would get the best of me and kinda push me down. And so I think remembering and realizing and really learning to embody the knowing that I am powerful. I have survived everything that has been thrown my way up to now, and I'm going to continue surviving. And now I am not that 3-year-old who is stubbing my toe on the couch. Now as an adult, I have a lot more tools to deal with whatever comes my way. So, really remembering that we are actually powerful and we are capable. And that we're worthy of upgrading these limiting beliefs, of letting go of relationships or jobs that don't serve us, that don't see our magic and our power. It can be hard work, but it's really rewarding.
And when we say limiting beliefs, it's just our beliefs are limited because we're humans, we're here. It's just the way it is. And sometimes I've equated my soul to be like the sun.
Mm,
And it's just beating down and it's always warm, but sometimes the clouds get in the way, or
mhm,
sometimes, but I have this prison between the sun and and I only see purple, and somebody else might only see red, and somebody else might only see yellow. And we all have this filter in between our souls and our bodies that we see things differently. And
mhm.
different isn't wrong. It's like that meme where the person's arguing over whether it's a nine or a six, or a B or a P, or a whatever symbol you think it looks like. I see it different. I
Mhm.
was raised different. You're not seeing it wrong, and that's such a new way of looking at things because I was taught to be right or wrong. There was no neutral. So, how do we get into be more neutral where I'm not empty?
Mm.
I'm just filling up a little slower with what I want that to be. I don't know.
Yeah, I love that so much, Laura Jane. I love bringing that forward, because I think that for many of us, if we've been educated, especially in, kind of the traditional education system, there is this idea, this indoctrination that happens of be like everyone else, but better, right? So it's like we're supposed to all be the same, but then we're all supposed to be the best at whatever it is that we're doing. And so, yeah, really starting to question, well, what is it that makes me think that different is wrong? And again, I think it's really well intentioned, right? Because oftentimes if we think, oh, if I deviate off of this path, that's going to limit my opportunities in partner, in job, in whatever it is, because I won't be as desirable because this is what desirable looks and feels like, right? In terms of success or being pretty or, whatever it is that we equate to being successful and worthy. And so if we really start to question those systems and realize, and this is where I think to your question of how do we start to neutralize our approach to it, I think it's really being able to zoom out. That is what has really helped me is zooming out to say, "Oh, these beliefs that I'm holding, that I identify with, they actually didn't come from inside of me. They came from outside of me." And again, because I wanted to survive, I want to fit in, I'm like, okay, I get it. This is how we do things around here. But thinking that I tend to be a very weird and quirky person, and for a long time I didn't let that out. I didn't let my silliness out to play because I thought, I have to be serious to be taken seriously. And really dismantling that and being able to neutralize it rather than criticize myself for being that way. I was like, no, it's not different. It's not wrong to be different. It's actually really beautiful. And I love that prism analogy. I use that a lot myself actually. So it's really resonant, this idea that it's together we make up a whole rainbow. We make up all of these different colors. And I think about agriculture as well because I believe in fractals. So if you look at one area, you can apply it to another. If we look at the individual, we can apply it to the collective. And if you look at, let's say, cornfields, miles of cornfields, everything is the same, everything is planted really close together. It's all leaching the same nutrients from the soil. Whereas if we tap into other ways of thinking about agriculture, for instance, a Three Sisters garden where you've got squash, black beans, and corn all growing together, it's actually a symbiotic relationship. So the more we lean into our differences and what makes us unique, the more we can complement each other and the more that we can create what I like to say is just pure magic.
And it's like those plants that help feed each other instead of deplete each other.
Exactly.
And I have friends in both of those categories, you know? Well, definitely the ones that I feel fed from are the ones I like to hang out with long more. And the ones that depleting, you're like, oh, I gotta go home, gotta recharge, gotta. That's both good for me. You know,
Mm,
it's like to learn how to recharge, to learn how to be okay being around people that trigger you. I
mm.
don't do this at home if you're not ready. But, you know, when you can feel like I trigger less today than I did 2 months ago,
Mm.
like, I can go to this person's house and be nice.
Yeah, I think that's so great because and exactly what you said, it's all serving us, right? It's all happening, I like to say for us, not to us. Um, And I think that's so important because when we start to see that, we start to say, okay, maybe this challenge, I like to use the example of going to the gym, right? When we go to the gym, oftentimes we know consciously that we might be sore after we lift some weights, or it might be hard to move the next day after a workout. But we often say, oh, it's a good kind of pain. It's a good kind of sore because we know we're getting stronger. And I like to think of that as well, looking at what is that progress we're making over time? Exactly to the example you used. Oh, wow. 2 months ago, my fuse was a lot shorter, or I got triggered more easily. And now I'm able to stay more grounded. One exercise that I absolutely love and highly recommend to anyone who does want to try this at home is setting boundaries, right? And not only setting the boundary, but actually enforcing the boundary, because that's the hard work of enforcing the boundary. And when I start to for me, it was a meditation practice. I've been meditating every day for about 2.5 years now because after going through a couple of times of, oh, I meditate for a week here, 2 weeks there, but I wasn't really sticking with it, rather than approach it as an exercise to simply quiet the mind, I looked at it as a personal boundary that I get to have 5 minutes or 10 minutes to myself to start my day. Whether that was sitting quietly, doing a guided meditation, it became this wedge that I inserted into my life at a time when I felt like I didn't deserve to have that time. I owed it to pouring out into others, to constantly being productive, to doing stuff around the house, whatever it was. It felt really uncomfortable to even just wedge in 5 or 10 minutes for myself each day. But as I developed that practice and I said, wow, this actually feels really good. And then from there started to see, wow, just 10 minutes a day here actually gives me more energy and more capacity to stay grounded with my partner, to get more stuff done at work or around the house. I started widening that wedge. And now I really embody this belief, this knowing that when I take care of myself first, that's actually what helps me fill my cup so that I can overflow into these other domains, these other endeavors that I'm wanting to be productive in or I'm wanting to be generous in. But when I started to really look at the motivation of why don't I do this? Why don't I think I deserve it? I also had to confront the belief that I thought if I pour out enough, others will pour into me. I was waiting for someone to come save me or to come fill my cup. And I realized that the one that I was waiting for was me. I am the only one who can truly save myself or fill my own cup. So as I created that wedge and kept widening it, now when it comes to owning my boundaries, not to say, I mean, it's not an act of perfection, right? I'm not done. It's a constant work in progress. And sometimes I mess it up and then I say, oh, thanks for that information. I did get triggered there because I didn't own a boundary that is important to me. But it's all an experiment. And it's been really fun learning to own those boundaries because a lot of my sense of self-worth and confidence and power has come from that.
And I think some of the drive that I have had behind that limiting belief that doesn't sound like one is busy.
Mm,
If you are busy, you are successful. If you're always way too busy, we live in a society where we brag about working too much. And I don't want to use the word brag, but we do. Is have you ever not heard someone complain about their legs after leg day? Like, I can't walk today. It's like, oh my gosh. Yeah, but it's real. And when we have these other things in other areas of our life, it's real. And so, what is that belief that busy is so important? Why do I need to be busy? Why do I need to show up 40, 50 hours a week instead of 40 like everybody else? Because I feel like I need to do that extra. So how do you start filling that up without that limitation or having
mm,
that boundary?
love that. I think again it comes to zooming out and we were talking earlier about activating curiosity, a question that I really love to ask is who benefits from me believing this? When it comes to questioning that belief, who benefits? And when we look at society and the system and the structure that we live in, yeah, a lot of businesses really benefit from us believing that we need to be productive 50, 60, 80 hours a week, not sleeping, not prioritizing family. We are conditioned to prioritize work very often. Whether that's, and when I say work, I don't necessarily mean a career, it could be whatever field you're in. And even as, let's say, a stay at home parent, right? Prioritizing work is that busyness, right? Thinking that we always have to be going and doing. So, whatever it is that we view as kind of our identity of work, whatever domain that is, there's a lot of, to your point, pride that can come from, wow, I'm working so hard and I didn't have time to do anything else other than work. And I like to think of it as just an imbalance, if to your point of like doing leg day, right? If someone skips leg day or arm day or whatever it is at the gym, like you're going to look kind of funny because you're only working one particular muscle group or one area. And I believe that what we want are lives that are enriched and full of many things, right? We want, sure, work that means something to us. I'm very passionate about the work that I do. And I want a fulfilling partnership. And I want to take care of my body. And I want friendships and hobbies. And I want all of these things. I want a full life. But when we're oriented towards work as the priority, everything else has to fit in between or it gets pushed off of the plate, then yeah, we get burned out, right? And that's another thing that who benefits from us being burned out, from us, let's say, not having the energy or the time to cook our own meals. And we just go out to eat or we get takeout all the time, not having the energy to um, have hobbies and do things at home, we get the subscriptions to Netflix and all of the, viewing channels because we just don't have the energy to do anything else at the end of the day. And so it's this machine of consumerism that really benefits when we are small, when we're tired, when we're burned out, when we think that buying the next cosmetic or whatever it is going to somehow fill that hole of unworthiness inside of us. And when we start to take that power back, we stop following those rules like obedient people. We stop buying in as much and we say, I can actually have a great life with a lot less. I don't need to have the latest gadget or the latest thing to show off to my neighbors because my worth comes from a place inside of me, not from the things around me.
That's a really tough one. A lot of us identify with the things around us, our jobs, our family, our cars. It's we get those things that make us feel comfortable, right? I don't buy the car that makes me feel uncomfortable because I don't want that one. You might get stuck with one. Now that's a different story. But talking through all this stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, sometimes I'm so busy, I only have time to put $1 worth of gas in my car. So I put $1 worth of gas in my car, and I go, and guess what? I'm stopping again, and I'm stopping again. It's like I don't have time. I'm just going to put $1 in. And if we do that in the long run, every time we stop for those couple seconds is tremendously more time spent than had we had the time to fill it up one time.
Hmm.
And we do that to our bodies. We do that to, I have this belief that I got to go, 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 go. So don't take any time for me. And then I'm crashing and burning or getting sick or ending up in the hospital or all these things when we don't take the time to take care of ourselves, it catches up.
It absolutely catches up. And yeah, I think filling the gas tank is a great analogy to use. And we do oftentimes wait until our body just shuts down. I definitely sometimes wait until I hit that wall and then, that's where I'm on the couch all weekend or, can't think of doing anything else. But it also can take a lot of discipline and consistency to start to see the payoff of some of those habits that maybe only take 5 or 10 minutes a day, but they take 5 or 10 minutes every day. And so we think like, "Oh, forget it, that's too much." But I like to say, well, most of us, I would say the vast majority of us see the value of brushing our teeth on a regular basis. We might not always floss, until we're going to the dentist, but we see the value of brushing our teeth because we are identified, we understand the cost of not doing that, right? And so I think to your point too, I like to use a term, ignorance is bliss. That doesn't necessarily mean we're really happy about it, but it just means we don't necessarily know any better. So if we haven't actually taken the time to slow down, to fill our cup or fill our tank, we actually don't know what that feels like. I remember I used to brag about only getting, 5 or 6 hours of sleep every night because I was working so much. And I didn't know what it was costing me until I started prioritizing sleep. And now when I go a night or two not getting sufficient sleep, I go, whoa, that's having a huge impact on me. And so some of it can be a bit of a leap of faith to say, okay, I trust that this is working for a lot of other people. I trust that I'll start to see some benefits if I stick with it. But in an instant gratification society, how often do we try something once or twice and we say, oh, it didn't work for me. It's not any good. So I'm just going to give it up and go back to my old habits. And, we know whatever research you want to quote, whether it's 21 days, 60 days, 30 days to form a new habit, it's really to see the benefits of that new habit. We need to see some consistency in it. But that can be really hard when we have a full plate of kids that we're taking care of and a job and a partner who works or, all of these different things. And so it can be a challenge. And that's where I think the other part that's really tricky and can create a lot of friction is letting some things go. Letting go of the idea that we have to be perfect, we have to do it all. Maybe the kids get to do their own laundry this weekend, or, maybe you ask your partner to step up and do something around the house so that you have time to go hang out with your friends or, do something else that's even just sitting by yourself. We oftentimes think, oh, well, that's not good enough. That's not productive. It's not a worthy reason to want alone time just to go take a bath. That's one of my favorite things to do is, and it's not taking the bath that really helps. It's having the courage to ask for support so that I have the space and time to go take a bath because it's an investment in myself.
Yeah, I love the long bath. It's like, um, don't I'm still in my jammas because I'm planning a long bath in a minute. because I wait for the water to get hot again.
Yes, so good.
But yeah, we all have that special thing. And, I can get so much joy just walking outside and looking at the sky, and just knowing that I've never seen the same sky twice. This never been the same. And how beautiful each and every one of them is. And to think people are the same way. If you just look at it for the value added, it's so beautiful to have people around. And if you have to stop for gas every 2 seconds, that's better than not doing it at all. If you're tired of the roller coaster ride, get on the merry-go-round for a while. They're both great, but one of them, you're going to have a lot more thrills. And in our lives, as we have the challenges and the ups and downs, you feel reward way more than the steady around the merry-go-round we go, 'cause there's not that contrast, and there's so
Mm,
much value we get out of contrast, but yet we fight it because we only want the one half of the contrast, the good that we wanna put the label good on. So
mhm.
really struggling to have the label it just is. It just is. It's not good or bad, it's just here, and I can find the benefit 'cause they are all can do either. What is like, I love the Kenny Rogers Gambler song, it's like, "Every hand's a winner and every hand's a loser," and you really get to pick. It's how you play your cards, whether you're gonna win or not, and that's what this limiting belief is. And I'm like, "Oh, I only have a couple of 2s, so there's no way I'm gonna win this game." And we downplay what we've got, where if I play my cards right, I can bluff my way through here and I can win. So that belief that you can win is so critical. And winning doesn't mean that someone else has to lose, just means you got what you needed.
Absolutely, Laura Jane. I think that's a great way to put it, and I think that it's about realizing and remembering that we're each playing our own game, right? So we each have the winning hand of our own game. It's when we're trying to play someone else's game for them or the game that we think we're supposed to be playing that we can end up with those losing hands because we're not playing our cards right. We're not tuning in to say, what is it that brings me alive? What is it that I really want? What do I desire? What lights me up? Instead, we're saying, oh, I'm supposed to do this for this reason or because someone expects it of me. And so, yeah, we all get to win our own game of life. And I think that's just so incredible and inspiring.
Ah, this is fun. Let's wind down. Let's talk a little bit about you, what you do, how our friend can get a hold of you, and what's that one thing we get to try this week? See if it works for us.
Mm. Thank you so much. Yeah, gosh, the nutshell version of me is always a challenging question, but I think, right now I have activated a new life chapter within the last year. I last year went through a divorce. I quit my consulting job, sold my house, went on an international travel sabbatical for 6 months. It was the first time since I was 15 years old that I gave myself permission to not work. So that was a really wild and fun experience. I traveled, checking off all the bucket list items that I had saved up for a long time. And after I finished my sabbatical, I am now co founder of two different companies. One is a healing company called the Heal Collective, where here everything is about love. It's an acronym, really bringing people together to experience what it is to heal with people who are on their own journey, but in community with one another, experiencing these different modalities that might resonate, like breath work, meditation, somatic practices, ecstatic dance, you name it. And then the other company is an AI video game where we are really embedding these principles of personal development, self awareness, emotional intelligence into a super cute and fun, cozy simulation game. And these are the dreams that I've been dreaming for a long time, wanting to be an entrepreneur, wanting to believe in myself enough to take the risk. And so I actually did it and have been enjoying the ride ever since. The ups and the downs, it definitely comes with its challenges. But you can find me. I have websites, different websites, healcollective.me or astropuffs.com. And then you can look up the same on Instagram primarily, or find me on LinkedIn, Carissa Karban. Would love to connect, would love to hear what might have resonated, or if there's anything that you need support with on your journey, I would love to know. And so I think one thing that you might get to try this week to see how it lands and if it resonates is try inserting one of those questions whenever, you're feeling maybe frustrated or triggered, maybe checking in with one of those questions that you heard here of, well, who benefits from me believing this, or where did this belief come from? And just see if you're willing to pull the thread on that question and see where it takes you.
I've never asked the who's benefiting from this. I've done the other one. So this is definitely going to be fun for me. So next time I feel that grungy or that trigger, who is benefiting from me feeling like this?
Mm.
And if it's resentment and anger, it's not me. So, if you're the only one that's benefiting from it, what's the easy one to turn around? So, thank you so much for the challenge. This is going to be fun. I've not done it, so woohoo! And then, friend, thank you for joining us. Carissa and I are not medical or mental licensed professionals. We're here for entertainment. People that have struggled on our path and found a way to make it a little smoother and shine a little light, and want to shine a light your way. So thank you for joining, and stay tuned for the next episode.
Are you tired of waking up exhausted? You are not alone. If you're looking to take your life back, let's start with the simple step of adjusting your self-talk. Stay tuned for the next episode with your host, Lara Jane. Remember to follow the show so you don't miss the next simple step that you can use to feel more confident. And please leave an honest review.